Ben Burgis is an author. He actually just published a book titled "Give Them an Argument: Logic for the Left." He is a regular guest on the Michael Brooks Show, otherwise known as TMBS, and he also teaches at Georgia State University Perimeter College. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Turns out that the Workers' Party here in the United States has decided to endorse Elizabeth Warren over Bernie Sanders. Back in 2016, they had endorsed Bernie Sanders, but this time around, they've decided to go with Warren. Now, the national director of Working Families Party, his name is Maurice Mitchell, says Senator Warren knows how to kick Wall Street kleptocrats where it hurts, and she's got some truly visionary plans to make this country work for the many. We need a mass movement to make her plans a reality, and we're going to be part of that work. And they've decided, you know what, we're not gonna sit around, we're gonna go ahead and endorse someone right away and start pushing hard. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think that's disappointing, and it's especially strange to me because one of the Working Families Party's big issues has always been single-payer health insurance, and Bernie is, I think, much clearer on that issue than Warren. She just finally put a healthcare plan on her website, and I was just looking at it. And if you look at the part that especially disturbs me about that, about mental health care, that makes it sound like that would be separate from whatever sort of Medicare for all thing she's endorsing. She talks about Medicare for all, and then she talks about affordable mental health care. And usually when I hear that word affordable about health care, I start worrying because that's kind of the buzzword for, it's still in the market system. We're just gonna try to do some sort of cost control thing.
I have to be honest, I hadn't seen that she had put out her proposal for healthcare. I genuinely, and I'm naive, I genuinely thought that she was really signing on to Medicare for all. There were some shaky moments where her language wasn't as blunt as I would have liked it to be, but lately she made it appear as though she unequivocally supported Medicare for all, but I guess that's not the case.
Yeah, or at the very least that that the plan makes it sound like whatever sort of Medicare for all plan that she's endorsing might not include mental health, which I think would be a really worrying omission. But I also think that like on an even deeper level than that, like let's say she is like all in now on Medicare for all. The fact that it took, that there was this kind of rocky road to get there, that that she had to kind of be pressured on this in 2019 is itself worrying, because I don't see how we're getting, like, Medicare for all, achieving that involves going up against these vested interests that are so powerful. I don't see how we're gonna achieve that without somebody leading the charge who's like 1,000% committed to it. And if you just kind of came on board and there's still maybe a little ambiguity around the edges, I just don't see how that could possibly be as good a bet for getting there than somebody who has been saying exactly the same things about this since the 1970s.
Warren has been communicating quite a bit with some of the more establishment or centrist members of the Democratic Party lately. I feel as though she's trying to straddle both lines or both portions of the Democratic Party, the progressives and then the more establishment individuals within the party. I'm actually shocked that she didn't see how much of a failure that was when it came to Kamala Harris's initial strategy. This is a really bad idea. And I mean, look, for me, and everyone's different. I want to be clear about that. I don't want anyone to feel like I'm judging them based on the candidate they choose. But for me, an individual who does not support Medicare for all is no deal for me. Like that is my, I guess if you want to call it a purity test, it's a purity test. But we need an actual movement. And what I find fascinating is you have Maurice Mitchell, again, he's the national director of Working Families Party. He says, well, we want to support someone who's for a movement, but it seems as though Elizabeth Warren is kind of, backtracking and pushing for a little bit of incremental change, whereas the candidate they supported back in 2016 is all about a movement.
Yeah, he's always been all about a movement, and he understands that that movement is a movement for something, but it's also a movement against something, which is the Democratic establishment. I don't understand how you can have any hope of achieving any of these things that candidates like Sanders and Warren talk about if you don't see who's standing in the way very clearly. And it seems like Sanders has been kind of naming that enemy consistently for years, whereas Warren, yeah, as you say, she just did a meeting with Hillary Clinton. She's been sending all these messages to the Democratic establishment, that I can kind of work with you, and that's kind of always been her strategy. If you look at like what happened with the Consumer Protection Agency and all that, to sort of align herself with that kind of Clinton-Obama establishment wing and hope that she could convince them to do really progressive reforms and to like really, kind of go all in on that. And that's never going to happen because, we all kind of know that the establishment wing of the Democratic Party is aligned with corporate America, and they are part of the problem. If you don't see them as part of the problem, I don't see how you're going to build this movement to overcome them.
So I want to talk a little bit about how this vote happened and the lack of transparency that we're now experiencing by the Working Families Party. So according to the New York Times, the vote among tens of thousands of party members and national committee leaders resulted in a commanding majority for Ms. Warren. A party spokesman said she received more than 60% of the votes on the first ballot. However, the national committee leaders, 56 people, held 50% of the voting power, with party members accounting for another 50%. Several Sanders supporters called for the Working Families Party to release the full vote totals, which it has declined to do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds worrying. So like that sounds like the Working Families Party has like some equivalent of superdelegates, that there's if more than 56% of the voting power is held by these people, so it's not really one person, one vote. Which also makes sense because one thing I found really striking in 2016 was that if you look at unions that endorsed Sanders versus unions that endorsed Clinton, or grassroots organizations like Democracy for America that endorsed Sanders, pretty much all of the organizations that let people vote ended up going for Sanders. And yeah, I would be very curious to know, like, if they've got some kind of wacky voting system where, party leaders control a certain amount of votes and it's not just one person, one vote. I want to know what the actual votes are.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Did you know that TYT Network is now available on YouTube's new streaming platform, YouTube TV? Get access to full TYT episodes and exclusive shows by signing up for YouTube TV today. All new subscribers get a 7-day free trial, so head over to youtube.tv and search for the TYT Network channel.